Alright, so every time the car goes around a corner, you get the traction control light and the ABS light coming up. When you read through your fault codes in your ABS module, you've got a front right tone ring missing tooth fault. And then further down, logged in the PCM, VS signal, so it's vehicle speed. So the car has 4 ABS sensors, 1 on each wheel. It uses all of those to know what the vehicle speed is. It needs that for your traction control and it needs that for your ABS. Basically, when the hubs start to walk out, you miss the signal, and so it just puts the car into limp mode. So what you would do in this sort of a situation, because the system's telling us that it's the front right, is put the car up in the air, take the wheels off, visually inspect the sensor, inspect the wiring. If that all looks fine, then take the brake disc and caliper and all the carrier and everything off, and then we can have a look and see if the hub has walked out, which is the most likely cause. If you don't have one of these tools, which job is to spread this, you can just tap in a chisel, as long as it's nice and fat, and as you gently tap it in with a hammer, it will just spread it out, save you pushing it out. I've seen before in the past where people don't spread this and they basically beat the shit out of the knuckle. Don't do that. Just spread it and it'll slip on and off. Okay, so what's happening in giving this fault code is this is your ABS sensor, or your wheel speed sensor. That's it from its other side. And as part of the bearing, built in here is a trigger wheel. So as that turns, it's giving a trigger, and therefore the car knows what the wheel speed is. When you basically get the fault that I've just shown you before on the fault code system, what's happening is it's missing a message because the gap between here and here is just that little bit too big. So if you turn it over and look at it side on, you can actually see how that hub is standing a little bit proud of that face. Let me just balance this. So if you look at it now that's turned over, you can see this is your knuckle, whereas that's your hub, and it's, rather than being flush, it's actually standing a bit proud. So what's happening over time is it's walking out of the hub, and that's why you get the fault. What you can do to get around that is, obviously this has got to be replaced, and you can get a brace for it. So when you fit these, you've got to use some bearing retainer compound, and that was the Ford's idea of, that was how it was going to hold it. With the later ST and the Mark III RS, there's actually a circlip inside, and that stops it from walking out. You still use bearing retainer compound, but this is basically a workaround. So if you fit the brace, then this can never come back out. So we'll just run it through how to press this in and out, and then just fitting the brace, and just walk through it. So first, before we do any pressing, you're just going to remove the sensor, which is just a little Torx bolt holding it in. Pull the sensor out. And then the bottom ball joint heat shield cover is just held on with an 8mm bolt. So once you've removed those, now we can head over to the press with it. Alright, so similar to how we did the control arm bushes, we're using one of these braces. That's to support the knuckle, and then we're going to press the hub from the center down and out. Same deal, make sure you catch it, otherwise it's going to drop on the floor and probably break a toe or two. So we're just using a spacer tube to get the height right. It's just starting to come down. So just pop your hand underneath just to catch it when it does drop. Cool. And she's out. So that's going to go straight in the bin. Right, so prep work. You need to have a good look inside here and just check that there's no rust, corrosion, dirt or anything like that. You want it to be completely clean. So just a bit of brake cleaner on a rag. Give it a good wipe through. Make sure it's completely spotless. Make sure there's no corrosion build up in the edges. If there is, just hit it with a bit of a wire brush and give it a bit of a rub through. And with your new bearing, it will have some assembly oil on it. So same deal, brake cleaner on a rag. And give it a good wipe down so it's completely clean. Now at this point, you're going to want to take some Loctite bearing retainer compound. Oh, there's a new bottle. I haven't opened it. Cool, so some bearing retainer compound. I'm going to be pretty liberal with it. We basically don't want this thing to come back out again. And that brace is like our insurance, shall we say. So I'll just give it a little bit of a wipe so it has a nice even coating. Just clean off any excess. There is any. Cool. And now we're going to go put it back in the press, and we're going to press this inwards like that. Now we've got the hub knuckle set up on the press. We've got a slightly larger support piece here that is big enough so that that hub can sit through if it needs to. It won't, but it's just to make sure it's flush. And then a slightly smaller one to go on top of the hub here. And we're basically just going to press it in nice and slowly, making sure that it stays straight. So it's important that you watch your pressures. As you can see, it's going in nice and smoothly. Cool, so look, these are a little bit weak. I'm going to swap to the bolt section. It wouldn't fit in before, so it was good just to start off with a little one. There you go. And remember, same as before, you just want to use your finger to feel when it's flush. You just going to go. Alright, cool. So that's nice and flush, we can take it off and then fit that brace kit. Okay, so now the hub's all pressed into the knuckle. We just want to clean off any excess. Just again with a bit of brake cleaner on a rag. Just going to clean off any excess retainer compound residue. Okay, now this brace bolts to this point, and this point. Obviously there's two holes on this side because you can use it for the left or the right hand side. If you've got one of the early XR5 or STs, you will have a brake disc backing plate. The later ones don't have it. If you've got the brake disc backing plate, now's a good time to refit it, and you're going to slip your brace straight over. If you don't have one, look, sometimes you get a bit of corrosion in the threads. So these bolts are only small little 8 mils and they've got some thread lock on them, which is quite tough. It pays to just run a tap through this just to chase the thread to clean it up. So if you've got one, just do it. It's an M6x1. And you don't have to go hard. You just clean out any corrosion, especially if you're in the UK with the solid roads, you're going to have a lot of corrosion build up in there. So it can be a bit tricky to tell, are you cross-threading the bolt? Is it just the thread lock, or is the thread rooted because of the rust? Cool, blow them all out. Excellent. Now we can fit our brace. Now, it can be a little bit tricky because the back of the studs stick out. So what I find is you kind of got to line it up and then rotate the hub as you're trying to squish it past. Cool. Go. So we can put our first bolt in. Snip them up with an 8mm core drive. Like I said before, they are only small, so don't use something big. Definitely don't use an impact gun. And this will kind of stretch and spring down. Cool, so now if we look, that brace is going to keep it completely solid. It's going to keep it nice and flush between the two sides. So if the retainer compound does ever fail and the hub tries to move, the brace is going to stop it. Now you just refit that back to the car.